Mavericks are 5-7 on the season, and there's a lot of opinions on Luka Doncic right now. Let's talk about the true, the false, and the TBD on Luka's start to the season.
I'm here because I have to be here.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
That's it. It's me versus the machine. Don't let his lightness take away from his quickness.
You can rest later. You're young.
I'm in a recovery here.
Wait. One more thing.
Yeah, it's a one more thing. You're locked on the Dallas Mavericks. This one of your co-host Isaac Harris, longtime co-host of the show. My 10th season covering the Mavs. And I just finished watching that Tyson Paul fight on Netflix. And guys, I'm just like, I just got to go record something and talk Mavs. Which I don't know which is better right now, Mavs basketball or watching that fight. But thanks to everybody who's watching on YouTube. Leave a comment below. We're talking about Luka Doncic in this one more thing. How would you describe Luka's season so far in one word? One word. So don't write a sentence. One word on Luka's start to the season so far. If you haven't become a Locked On Mavs insider through subtext, make sure you do that. It's where we text you all the latest news and updates about the team, literally almost every single day. And guys, we're number one in the newsletter. Number one, it's a free newsletter, sends it right to your email inbox. It even like collects different Mavericks articles written on different websites and stuff, puts them in this one newsletter sent to you every day. Has the episode in it too. So make sure you do that. Help us stay number one in the network. We want to hit 1,000 coming up. All right. We want to hit 1,000 subs. We just launched this back a week or so ago, and we're getting close to 1,000. We're getting closer. So help us get to 1,000 doing that. Once again, it's free. Let's talk. No, I gotta say this real quick before we get to Luka. This podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com. Now let's talk about Luka. Man, the conversation around Luka right now is such an interesting one because I don't think I've seen the fan base and the Mavs fans as frustrated with Luka since he's been in the NBA. We've talked about how we have been doing this podcast since before Luka got here. So we've been doing the podcast. This podcast has been going every single day for every day of Luka's NBA career. And I think this is the most like hostile I want to say that the fans are right now towards Luka, as the Mavericks are 5-7 on the season. They're struggling. Luka's struggling. It's just a weird start overall to the whole season. And I want to say this real quick about Luka, because I shot out a tweet today and I just said, hey, how would you describe Luka's start to the season? And I was like, I wonder how many people are going to reply to this. All right. Well, way more than I expected, because I was like, I'm going to write down a bunch of the things. I started writing down all the replies, and then we got, 200-300 different replies. I'm like, all right, screw that. I'm not writing down all of these. But I wrote down a decent amount of them. And I want to go through in this one more thing of this Locked On Mavs, this next 15, 18 minutes here. And I want to go through different comments that fans have said. And I want to say things that I agree with on Luka's start to the season. I want to say things that I disagree with on Luka's start to the season. And some of the stuff that I think is like yet to be determined yet on Luka's start to the season. But we have to establish this. Luka has consistently raised the bar of the expectations. There's always been, I've always talked about, this equation. I've used it with sports too, but I learned about this equation in a non-sports context. But it was success equals results minus expectations. And if you do that equation here and you want a positive number for that success number, then the results have to be higher than the expectations. And the problem with when you have a generational star, a future Hall of Famer already, the expectations continue to grow, and therefore your results have to grow for it to subtract, be a positive number, and it equals success. And this is where right now it's a negative number because the expectations are higher, but the results are just not there. And I say the expectations because right now, Luka's averaging 29 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists a game. You know how many players are doing that in the league right now? You got it. One other player besides Luka, and that's his friend Nikola Jokic. Luka's also averaging 38 minutes a game. This isn't getting talked about enough, but Luka and Kyrie are playing a ton of minutes. But Luka especially, 38 minutes a game. He's one of 6 players in the league right now that's averaging over 37 minutes a game. You can also look at his he has a positive positive plus minus when he's on the floor. He has a +3 net rating in those minutes that he's on the floor. They're a minus whenever he's off the floor, just a -1, not the huge biggest thing. And then when he's on the floor, they have 116 offensive rating. So you can look at the counting numbers, you can look at the numbers and be like, dude, what are people talking about? That's a pretty great start to the season. For 99%, I shouldn't say 99%. Let's just say 90%. 90% of the people who have ever played in the NBA, those numbers across the board would be absolutely insane. And it's like they would dream for those numbers. But when you're Luka Doncic and you've started off your career this way, there's a little bit more to the numbers. And this is where when we go across the board, and so I started asking, or I asked that question, and man, the replies and everything. So I try to group a bunch of them into 3 different categories. So let's start with this because I really resonate with a lot of what fans are saying right now. I have a lot of the same frustrations about Luka's start to the season. And so I want to save those for the end of this podcast, or, the end of this. Yeah, it is podcast. Duh. Let me start with this. I want to start with what I disagree with. These are some things that fans wrote me back with about Luka's start to the season that I disagree with. Somebody wrote me and said he can't isolate effectively anymore. I disagree with that. I think Luka can isolate effectively. I think he's just choosing not to at times right now. I think he's settling. I think some of the step back threes that were mentioned a ton in these replies and these responses was about him settling for the step back threes. I think he can. He does look slower, not as athletic as before, but I do think he can still isolate effectively in the league right now. Somebody wrote back and said this: people are acting like he's regressed from his usual elite defensive self, which is obviously not true. He's played defense pretty well at times and really bad at times. This isn't new. We just don't know who else to blame right now. I disagree with this just because I think you're trying too hard to take away any defensive blame from Luka when Luka's been very bad defensively to start the season. And honestly, just not trying at times. And the culmination of that was the end of that Utah game, which was, in a very interesting. You can hear all about the Utah game on yesterday's podcast with Nick and Slightly covering all that. Someone else wrote in and said, by far the worst start he's had, and that is considering the year he came in way out of shape. This one I struggle with. I almost put it in the to be determined because I don't think this is this worst start. I mean, it's crazy, but I don't think a 29-8-8 start to the season is like his worst start. I kind of want to go back to his like rookie season, which is kind of unfair too. And the out of shape season when he started out of shape and all that stuff. I don't think I'm there. I don't think it's his worst start to a season. Somebody wrote in and said, we lost 4 straight games because of Luka. I disagree with that. I don't think they lost 4 straight games because of Luka. There's a lot of reasons. I actually did a little blame game the other day of ranking different reasons with Jason Kidd and injuries and all the stuff. Someone responded and said, he regressed in all facets of the game. I don't think that either. I don't think in all facets of his game, he has regressed and all that. I think there are definitely some areas that I'm about to get to and be very, very honest with you about as far as a negative light about Luka, but I don't think he's regressed in all facets of the game. And then someone wrote in, this is my last one I'll put in here, and said, he's been amazing, but we are spoiled, so we don't see it. I got to disagree with you. I don't think he's been amazing. And I do understand the concept of the whole like, hey, we're spoiled. We kind of take things for granted. Maybe we look at things a little different because we're like kind of spoiled to his level of play. But I don't think this is one of those scenarios of like, oh, we're just not seeing it because he's playing so good. I think he is struggling right now. Let's take a quick break. Let's do some ads. Let's get paid. And then my dog's just like prancing around behind me. So sorry for the noise of her nails. And and then I want to come back and talk about some small things that are to be determined. And then I want to talk about a lot of the things I agree with a lot of fans on coming up next on today's Locked On Mavs.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Podcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Guys, FanDuel, we have a game coming up on Saturday night against the San Antonio Spurs. All right. Wemby has been dominating. He's coming to town. Mavs have to try to bounce back and win a game. Debut of the city jerseys. If you want to place money on this game, you want to bet on this game, you can go to fanduel.com to do that. And get this, if you're watching, it's in the middle of the game and you're like, hey, I want to kind of bet on the stat line. It's changing or somebody's getting hot or something like that. I want to change this thing up. Then you can do that on FanDuel. They have a place where you can place your bets in the middle of the game. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Guys, Game Time. I get it. I can't even talk about having fun watching them Tyson Paul fight. Watching stuff at live events at home is fun on your TV, but it's even better if you can be in person. The Tyson Paul fight literally just happened like 15 minutes down the road from me. But you know what? I'm pretty glad. But anyway, Game Time has a new feature. Game Time is here to help you get tickets to live events, and it has this new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. It even filters out the fluff and all the incredible deals, so you don't have to sort through thousands of tickets. And here's the thing. My favorite feature is if you turn on this feature called all-in pricing, you won't be surprised by all the fees. I'm so sick and tired of buying the tickets and getting all the fees tacked on. You can do this through Game Time of all-in pricing, no surprise fees and all the stuff. Download Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time.
Shut it down! Oh, no! Let's go home!
All right. Let's keep talking about Luka. Let's keep talking about Luka, and definitely not that dumb fight. All right. Imagine if that fight was pay-per-view, by the way, and all the people who paid for it. Oof. Here's some things that are up in the air. Once again, I asked on Twitter, and I was like, hey, how would you describe Luka's start to the season? Got a lot of responses back from Mavs fans, a couple hundred responses. And these are some things said by Mavs fans that I'm like, I think this is a little bit up in the air. Somebody replied back and said, he's injured and not 100%. I think that's up in the air because I personally don't know of any like big hindering injury on him right now. Banged up a little here and there, but like, I just don't think right now at this current moment, I don't think there's any big injury that's hindering. Somebody said he needs his butt whooped. All right, moving past that one. Someone said it's the worst I've seen yet of him. I need a little bit more time. Once again, I think that's still to be determined of like, is this the worst version of Luka that we've seen? Someone wrote in and said a lot of these about the MVP, but someone wrote in and said the MVP is not happening. And I'm going to lump this one into someone wrote in and said, I bet on him to win MVP while I was in Vegas. Feels like a donation right now. A lot of MVP responses about him not winning MVP. I think this is to be determined. Is he in the front running right now? No. Is he digging his hole deeper to come back and win this thing? Absolutely, yes. I still think it's too early to say he can't win MVP. I think it's too early. We need to give it a little bit more time before we're like, all right, not an MVP season for Luka and all of that. Let me talk about the things I do agree with and I also want to highlight some incredible responses from some people that I'm like, oh, this is something I want to highlight. If you're a Luka stan who can't take criticism, this is probably the point you tune out of the podcast, because I'm going to be very brutally honest about Luka right now. Someone wrote in and said he needs to mature and to be a better leader. He needs to stop complaining and crying. This was by far one of the most popular responses on this, was about just his complaining, a lot of stuff about his body language and stuff. And it's 100% true. Like, there's this, I mean, I feel like I've said this a lot about the body language, and as a leader, that stuff matters. And on the basketball court, Luka's got to grow up with that. And we're year 7 into the NBA, and he has to, I want to say this correctly, as far as, I think there's a lot of people aware of that, a lot of conversations with that. And to be bluntly, it's just Luka to decide that. Like, Luka's just got to decide to take the next step in that. Someone said great numbers, poor shot selection. I agree with that. I mean, I talked about some numbers across the board that on paper look really good, but it's the shot selection. It's like, hey, we need you to get to the paint, stop selling for some of these shots, get to the paint, touch the paint. Then his bigger body in the paint, like, come on, you can shoot over pretty much anybody. If not, you're creating an open look for someone else. So I agree with that one. Someone wrote in and said, if he doesn't have the ball, he isn't engaged and settling for logo threes. This hasn't always been the case about Luka, but right now, I really think it is. Like, we saw him cut the other night for a bucket. I think it was Lively who hit him for a cutting layup, and it was like, whoa, it like popped off the screen, because like, he cut, he moved. And that's the type of thing. It's like, that's when you're starting to see disengaged Luka, is when Kyrie or somebody else has the ball and Luka's kind of like standing far off out on the wing. Like, he's got to stay engaged in the play. Somebody says he looks out of sync. Someone says his stats and productivity is there, but his body language, speed, and shooting is bad. With the best roster we've given him, I figured he'd be coming out hot and ready to have fun and ball out, as he was in the home opener. Someone said he's rusty and out of shape. I don't think he's in the greatest shape right now, so I agree with that. Someone said he isn't having fun or joy, and I think that's a huge thing to say. I don't think he's having fun at all right now, and that's the best part about Luka. Like, I think Luka's at his best when he's having fun, and you can kind of say, and these are a couple other comments that someone brought out that I thought was like really like just like really on the nail on the head here. Someone said this: his effort depends on if his step back three is falling. If he's missing, he starts to get mad, complains, doesn't get back on defense. Then his only goal for the game becomes hitting the step back three and putting his hands on his in the air, thanking the basketball gods that he finally hit one. If this doesn't like, this is something I've like literally wrote down before, of like, when he's playing really bad and he's so frustrated and all this stuff, he's not hitting the shot, but it's because of he's not hitting shots, and then he's not hustling on offensive rebounds, or he's not cutting to the basket, or he's getting beat backdoor by a defender. And then later on in the game, he hits a three and he's like, thank you. I'm like, no, like, you could still be like really involved in the game. And it's not just that like, oh, it's been such a bad night and so anyway, that's one of those. Someone else said, I expected a killer mentality after tasting the finals. Something has to be going on behind the scenes. It's that first sentence right there. Me too. I thought tasting the NBA finals and going against Boston, I thought we're going to get like this different side of Luka to start the season. It was going to be like supernova. This is why we were on this podcast saying like, he's going to pass Jokic to be the best player in the league. He's going to win MVP and like all this stuff. Because I just thought that was the final like straw for him to really push him to that next level of like, you know what? I know what I got to do to win the NBA finals, and I'm going to come into this season and do that. And he just hasn't done it. And this goes into this this sentence here. Someone said, and this could honestly be a whole podcast discussion, said he hasn't shown a desire to ascend himself. I think that was my favorite response yet, because Luka right now will be in the Hall of Fame. Luka right now at this level is a walking bucket. He can get 30 points on pretty much any given night he wants to. Luka is going to have the accolades and all of this stuff. But if Luka wants to reach the next level of like supreme greatness, of we're talking top 5, 6, 7, 8 player, top 10 player of all time, to win multiple titles, to win MVPs, he has to make a decision at some point that this level of Luka is that he's playing at is great and it's going to be one of the best players in the league and all this stuff. But does he want to be in that group of players' names, the all-time top 10 with multiple rings and MVPs and all of that? He's got to make a decision to do that. And so far, he hasn't made that decision. And some players just don't get there, right? Like, I mean, you got to adjust the expectations. But I think this is the full circle here with Mavs fans. Is he starts off such an insane start to an NBA season in his first few years, and he's getting the first team All NBAs and making the playoffs, and now we've seen him in the finals and 2 Western Conference finals and all this stuff. So the expectations have like grown, and it's like comparing to LeBron, comparing to these all-time greats. So it's like your trajectory is like being set to be this. But the decisions he's making right now at this level, at a great level, not an all-time great level, is like the contentment decisions. And he has got to make the decision as far as what athletically, playing weight wise, he wants to play at, the emotional maturity on the basketball court, with the body language and all the different stuff, and the effort on the floor consistently when he doesn't have the ball. It's those 3 things that I think could be wrong, is going to hold him back from reaching the upper echelon of all-time great players. So there you go. This is a one more thing. It's a little bit longer of a one more thing. So yeah, typically these are a little bit shorter, but literally we could go all day. And I think it's really telling. We could go all day and talk about Luka's start to the season, because I think some of it is overblown. It's not all Luka's fault that the Mavs are 5-7 or is weird stuff right now. You can blame stuff on Jason Kidd, some of the supporting cast. I think a lot of the injury stuff has a lot to do with that. But Luka isn't typical Luka right now. And it's okay to call that out. And it's pretty frustrating to watch some of the effort stuff and the complaining stuff and body language stuff and all of that, because he is the franchise cornerstone. He is the leader and all of that stuff. So will Luka flip the switch? I think he will. Like, we've seen Luka flip the switch at times during the seasons and stuff. So let's see. I will say it feels different for Mavs fans right now, in my opinion. I don't know what it looks like on Blue Sky over there, but it feels like Mavs fans are a little less patient with the different, the negative side of Luka, and because the positive side isn't outweighing the negative side right now. So there's that. Luka start to the season. Disappointing, frustrating, but the sky's not falling yet. And does he have time to flip this switch and the Mavericks season flip around and him be back in the MVP race and all this stuff? Absolutely. There's time for that. But right now, you just got to be honest. So there's that. We'll be back for a post-game show after the Spurs game in Wemby. Hopefully it's a win, and be back covering the Mavs and everything that happened in that game. Guys, peace out. Boom. Check out the City Edition jerseys. I think the City Edition jerseys are pretty dope, to be honest.